So the topic is, am I doing enough for my children? Now, this question is probably one of the most challenging questions we parents are faced with. It has caused, in many parents, right, on the far extreme, even breakups in marriages and stressful relationship with in-laws and outlaws. But when approached correctly, it can also be a uniting factor that brings the family closer together. So for Jean and I, this question is an ongoing one, even with 5 children and 27 years of experience. The good news is 28 years of experience, sorry. The good news is that we don't really need to do this alone. We have God as our main reference point, and we also are blessed with wise parents and parents-in-laws, plus mentors who have generously guided us throughout all these years. So over the next 15 minutes or so, we would like to share with you 7 key lessons that we have learned about this question. Okay, let's go. So,
Sorry.
first question. Okay, the first point is start with the end in mind. So as cliche as this may sound, this is the question that Jean and I ask ourselves all the time, especially when we need to make decisions about our children. Now, as parents, we have dreams, and these dreams are usually loaded upon our children. You know, what I didn't have when I was a young boy, what I would like to have, and what I think my children should have. Therefore, when we are not sure, we will end up doing it. And this is even more acute when we have fewer children with more resources. So our dreams for them, my dreams for them, do have direct impact on how much we do. But the big question is this then, how do we know whether this dream is correct and not wrong? So for Jean and I, like we mentioned before, we are blessed to have mentors whom we can seek counsel and advice from. I remember one of my mentors told me quite firmly, TC, there is God and you are not God, when I was talking to him about my aspirations for our children.
Yeah, sorry. So we are constantly learning to take the long-term view and to see beyond their childhood. We need to see what kind of adult our children will be. Not just the little cute child we have or a difficult teenager that we're struggling with. We need to envision them into their adulthoods. So we need to envision them 30 years old, maybe 40 years old. Will they be men and women with good character? Will they be blessing other people around them? So keeping the long-term view will prevent us from being distracted with all the things that are going around us.
Okay. Point number 2, we need to balance and prioritize. Now, this doing enough normally revolves around 2 main areas. The first is preparing them with skills and knowledge, studies, extracurricular activities. The second is around values and character related. For example, being good steward of all that God has given to us, being respectful. Now, while both are important, we need to be intentional in walking this tightrope. Now, while most of us will agree on the importance of character and values, but the reality is that the performance-oriented world that we live in will sometimes cause us to unknowingly place more emphasis on skills and knowledge more than character and values. The 4 quadrants that you see on the screen, it helps us picture the type of adults that are out there. Now for us, our priorities are to make sure that our children grow well towards the right side of the quadrant first. Then only we try to do all we can to move them up. And from our experience, moving to the right demand a lot more from us because these are normally caught and not taught. You cannot outsource them.
Yeah, so priority means making conscious decisions based on what we believe is best for our family. So for example, we emphasize on the importance of having meals together as much as we can. If we can make it, we will all eat together. For both of us, by now, the children know that the weekends are time with the family. And so if they have their own program or plans with their friends or their colleagues, it's normal now for them to ask, so what's happening on this weekend? What's happening on this date? Basically, they are just trying to plan their schedule to make sure that, to respect the time that we have. And then we also place importance of attending church together as a family. So now with church online, we try to sit down together and watch online service. And then, of course, because I come from Setiawan, my parents are still living in Setiawan. We do make regular trips back to visit them, and they know it is important. So we encourage them to join us, and they do try, unless they really have important commitments and other programs for the weekend. So this is priority within our family. Yeah.
So point number 3, we will never be able to do enough. I mean, the reality is that we are human and there are constraints in life, right? Not just our own constraint, either our time or our money, but also the children, their time and energy. Now, we are careful not to put too much pressure on ourselves and also not to load too much on them. Now, as we look back, there are indeed seasons for everything. For us, there are seasons when, when we face great challenges with career, jobs, or there are times when we have to prioritize our time with aging parents who are unwell. But what's important is this. We need to accept that we mustn't and cannot be rigid with programs, and priorities need to be altered when necessary. For example, we have seen parents committing to certain extracurricular activities for their children, which takes up a lot of time and resources, fetching them to the best tuition teacher at the other side of town. And they refuse to budge even when certain situations have changed. For example, when the time taken to fetch the children is no longer viable, thus creating a lot of stress in the family. Sometimes I wonder if this is really worth it, especially when the priority that we're talking about is about skills and knowledge and not about values.
Yeah, so we are all sacrificial parents, yeah. But sacrifices sometimes can be wrongly prioritized, and this can become a disillusion to your marriage and your parenting. So we have seen parents become resentful, actually, especially when the children leave home. So they realize that all the doing that they've been so focused on the children has made everything else become less important, less meaningful. So, for example, their own health, their marriage, there could have been hobbies. These all have taken a back seat because they have been doing so much for the children. So they struggle to reconcile the sacrifices they have made to now the relationship, or rather the lack of relationship that they have with their adult children. So, dear friends, do you know that we would never be able to sacrifice enough for them? So do remember to prioritize. Learn to take care of ourselves, our relationships, even as we do the best that we can for our children. Yeah.
Okay. Next point. Point number 4. A strong marriage is the first core foundation to parenting. The stronger our marriages are, the more we can do for our children. As what Nikki and Silas said in the parenting course, the best way to parent our children is to have a strong marriage. So for Jean and I, as a principal, the strength of our marriage takes priority over the children. We do allocate time for our date time. We go off for short breaks on our own so that our batteries are always fully charged. Now, the interesting thing is this, that as the children grow up, they appreciate these priorities even more. A strong marriage is needed because we need to constantly agree and align on what's best and how much to do for the children. As mentioned earlier, we all bring our dreams into parenting, and very often these dreams are different. Chinese school, national school, or private school. Piano, violin, ballet, or taekwondo. Eating at mama or eating at McDonald's. Bible camp or karate camp. Now, strong marriages provide a good foundation to address tough parenting questions.
Yeah, so a strong marriage means a thriving marriage. And a thriving marriage will ensure a very secure home where there is love and acceptance and fun and laughter. An emotionally secure home is the most comforting thing for our growing children. They will always want to come home at any stage of their lives. So even for me, right, I grew up in the simplicity of my home in Sitiawan. I couldn't imagine any other place that could be better than home. And growing up into adulthood, I realized that was because actually it was the strength and the stability of my parents' marriage. So how do we ensure that we're going to have a thriving marriage? So we have learned the importance of having our marriage time, date time, yeah, basically time exclusively set for in our calendar and to spend with each other. So basically we go and patong, right? We also attend courses. We are involved in running programs that are related to marriage, to family. So for example, courses by Alpha Malaysia, by Focus on the Family Malaysia. And we have also learned to find common activities. And this has to be intentional because this is not going to happen naturally. So we will always have to, uh, you know, we always have our own preferences, right? What we like. But we need to find something that we can do together so that we can grow all together. And this is going to be so precious and so fulfilling. So, for example, we enjoy hiking. So we try to find time, carve out time to go hiking together. We also enjoy food, obviously. So we spend a lot of our marriage time actually eating together. So, yeah. So that's trying to work at a thriving marriage, right? Yeah. So next point is
divine intervention. Second, which is the second core foundation to parenting. Now, this to me personally is the most important foundation for parenting. You know, as much as we want to do many things, the reality is that most things, almost everything about parenting is not within our control. So therefore, for me, for us, committing our children to our Heavenly Father is really, really precious. I'm limited in so many ways. We do not have all the money, the time, the energy to do all the things that we want to do for the children. And even if we have, there are so many things that is totally out of our human ability. So therefore, for us, it is so important to raise them up in a way that reflect this. That means that we want to raise them up to have that personal relationship with the same Heavenly Father that we have, a Heavenly Father who forgives, who provides, and who protects.
Yeah, so we actually set aside time to pray for each other, and we also pray for each and every one of our children. At certain point, we all need to let go of our children, and that's when the rubber really hits the road, and we really need to trust God to take care of them. So our 3 older children had left home at different times for further education. The truth is that the moment they leave, we are totally out of control, except we can only pray and trust God to take care of them. And when they see our dependency on God in all our limitations, we hope and pray that they will also in their own lives learn to do that. So,
Point number 6, a loving and caring community is the third core foundation to parenting. There's an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah. So we cannot do enough for ourselves, by ourselves, because the children actually do need diversity, role models, as well as more eyeballs to check on them. So for us at certain seasons, they will find it difficult to talk to us. And that's a reality. But if they have trusted uncles and aunties to go to, which they did, they will not be left in the lurch, which they will not, thank God. Nor will they be drawn to other unfavorable sources of advice. And there are plenty online nowadays. Yeah.
And parenting children together with the bigger community also have other benefits. It gives us time off for our marriage time. And therefore, at this stage of our life, we encourage the younger couples in our community, in our CG, to leave their children with us so that they can go and spend time together to strengthen their marriages and build trust. So we strongly encourage that you find your own village.
So I have a story to tell. A few years ago, our car broke down on our way back from Singapore, and TC was not with me. I was driving the whole family. And we had to wait for our car to be towed, and we had friends, wonderful friends, who came to rescue the family. So once safely home, our younger son, and at that time he was barely a teenager, he turned to our friend and said, "Uncle, if my parents are not around, can I come and live with you?" So that's really what you call a trusted community, right?
Yeah. Yep. And the 7th point, which is our last point, is this: enjoy the journey and may your household be blessed and be a blessing to the community. Now, while parenting is such a big topic, but my friends, don't take things too seriously. I think because children are tougher than what we think. They don't actually expect us to be technically perfect in every way, but they do need us to be real. So please get rid of all the guilt and let us be as real as possible to them, especially as they grow up.
Yeah, and we worry a lot. Yeah, of course, especially in current time which is so uncertain, and both of us are not spared. Yeah, but the Bible has a lot to say and to teach us about worries. The fact is that most of the things that we worry about in parenting actually has very, very little impact when they become adults, when they're 30 years old, when they're 40 years old. Remember when we mentioned earlier? So for example, we worry whether they will be able to do well in their school exam. We spend so much effort preparing them for the exams. Of course, we want to make sure that they can do the best that they can, right? But if you're going to be worried and stressed for every upcoming exam, we really, really need to rethink. And do keep check on what we are worried about, and don't get so easily discouraged.
Yeah. Again, having mentors in life really help to enjoy the journey and not to be so worried. Let me tell a story, right? So I was thinking very hard about, at one point earlier when we were young parents, about how much insurance to buy, right? And my mentor turned to me and said, TC, there is a God and He is in control. So look to Him. Sure, we need to do what we need to do, but always remember at the back of our mind, there is a God. So dear fellow parents, focus on the important things. Enjoy, develop the relationship with them, and together let's grow old together with them.
Yeah, so here are some pictures of our children. They have grown. Some of them are still growing. So we are really enjoying the journey, right? So we have shared with you 7 points, and here is the summary. Here's the summary. So we started to say that we want to start with the end in mind, and we need to envision them as adults, 30 years old, 40 years old, right? And the second point is we need to balance and prioritize. So it's skills and knowledge versus character and value. And then third point is we will never be able to do enough because there are different seasons and different priorities.
The fourth point, a strong marriage is a key to a secure home, right? Fifth point, divine intervention. We need to depend on the Lord because we are limited in our abilities. The sixth point, a loving and caring community because we cannot do this alone. Last but not least, enjoy the journey. They grow up so fast and before you know it, they will leave home. So thank you